Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Harty. Can I just say how delighted I am personally that Intertrade Ireland is part of the Women in Business All Island Chat series. I think through this series, we've had the opportunity to hear from many successful female leaders from right across the island and beyond, which I think has inspired us all in our respective roles. And today is certainly no different. We have such an amazing and inspirational panel today. These type of events are at the heart of what Intertrade Ireland as an organisation is about. We as an organisation want to help to facilitate relationship building and knowledge sharing across the island. And I think as business leaders and individuals, we can learn so much from listening to the experiences of others and applying that knowledge in our own environment and in our own organisations. And I think knowledge sharing and collaboration is at the heart of every successful business and individual. I think the sum of what we can do together is much more powerful than going it alone. And I think it will take collaboration between business and people to help our economy on the road to recovery. And I think we're already on that journey. And I think events like today will inspire us to go on that journey further. I certainly cannot wait to hear from the panel this morning and their experiences in leading through the past 12 months. And I would like to just thank Women in Business for another great lineup of speakers and another great event. And can I wish you and everybody a successful and enjoyable day. Thank you.
Thank you, and a big thanks to Intertrade Ireland, who are our partners in this event. I think when we were inspired to launch this series of chats across the island of Ireland, we were thinking increasingly women. I think especially female founders, business owners, they're kind of working on their own. They're trying to build networks. We're too small, an island, not to want to create a community which goes across the whole of the island. It inspired us to create a kind of a virtual forum for women to come together to learn from, no pressure ladies, those agile, fast thinking and adaptable leaders who survive and thrive in the post-pandemic world. It's a 4-part webinar series. This is the finale, and myself and Roseanne Kelly, who you'll hear from in a minute, the CEO of Women in Business in Northern Ireland, have collaborated in the past on building these connections between women in business across Ireland. There's just 2 things, just to nudge you into a growth mindset. There's 2 things I will tell you. One is, all the time, women ask me, how do I get to be that person who has the PhD? How do I launch a successful business? How do I become a CEO? How do I become that finance director? And I always say, do your homework. I'm a lifelong learner. I've spent my life going back to university, learning new skills, getting new educational qualifications every time I didn't know something. But the second most important thing is ask somebody who's there already. So when you set a sat nav in your brain, the most important thing is, because you don't know how to get there, you've never been on that journey before. So you ask women who've got there already, how did they get to be where they are, which is what is really at the heart of what we're trying to do this morning. But the second thing I'll tell you is not to get too geeky. Those of you of a certain age may think that you can't learn new stuff. So way back in the past, you know, everybody believed that whatever brain cells you were born with, they stayed with you the whole of your life. It's not true. About 10 years ago, a whole pile of erudite scientists discovered that actually in 2 very important parts of your brain cells replicate all of the time. But here's the thing. They don't always replicate as fast as another person. It all depends on how well you exercise your brain. Just like your body, exercising your brain means that you're open to new thinking, that you're open to new learning, that you have the ability to adapt and to change and to be that kind of agile thinker. So I want to throw it out there for all of you who are listening, that it doesn't matter what age you are, your brain cells will always renew. You always have the capacity to learn new things. And my own mantra in life is always be interested rather than interesting. And you'll learn an awful lot more from the people around you. Now, we have 4 beautiful brains that I'm going to dive into this morning. It'll be totally painless. No neurosurgeons around here, so I just have to use the power of words to get inside them. So I'm going to start with you, Anne, because whoever appears on my screen in clockwork order gets to be asked first. So first of all, I guess, you know, when the pandemic hit, what happened to your business? What happened to your organization?
Thank you, Nora. CBL employ just over 12,000 people. About 80% of those work on client site and 20% then internally in our organisation. And one of the first things that happened, of course, is that our clients dramatically slowed down hiring people, particularly on a permanent basis. Certainly for me, yeah, you could sense the fear and anxiety right across our workforce. First of all, they were worried about their health and the health of their families because of COVID. But secondly, they were also worried for their livelihoods and their jobs. So what we did as a team was we put just 3 very simple goals in place when we all went home to work from home on the 12th of March, or as many people as possible. Everybody couldn't go and work from home, but as many people as possible did. And we put in place just 3 very simple goals so that everybody knew where we were going in the organisation. And they were essentially that, first of all, we were going to protect the health and well-being of our employees and do our very best to maintain as many jobs as possible. We were going to prioritise our second goal was to prioritise our client first ethos, which we have, which we felt would help us sustain our business in the long term. And our final goal then was that as we were coming out of the crisis, we would invest to grow the business further. So we wanted to people to settle, just to understand where we were doing our very best within the uncertainty that there was, but also there was something to look forward to in the future, because we were also keeping a weather eye on when we would come out of this crisis. Of course, we didn't think it would be as long as it is, but as things turned out, April and May last year were, really, really tough. Then, by June, companies had started to settle back and think about growth again, and of course then think about hiring people. And actually that has continued since then.
And Anne, the way you describe that is always like it was all very well organized and strategic, and I'm guessing it wasn't that easy. But what about you personally since the pandemic? How did you cope?
Well, interesting for me, I had never worked from home because I've always felt I'd be too easily distracted. So I was in the office, full time, 5 days a week. But one of the things I think that happened for me was I just saw the huge benefit that I could get from working from home. And particularly, I had a son doing his leaving cert. And, I now really appreciate that I was able to be here with him, particularly for that terribly uncertain period when was it going to be on, was it not? They know. And I suppose one of my things that I will always remember is just sitting on the couch with him as we were waiting for the minister to say what he was going to do next. So certainly for me, I valued that time, but I also equally recognised how challenging it must have been or must be for people with younger children, particularly under the age of 12 or 13, trying to manage that homeschool and work at the same time. And
I'm guessing you didn't learn how to make sourdough bread?
I didn't, but actually one of my son's friends is very good at making it, and that's fantastic. He delivers the odd loaf every now and again.
Look at you. I think that the reality is that, I've often said, forgive me now for all of you who are listening and who have young children, that that babies, maternity leave after your baby is born is fantastic and very valuable, but they love to be fed and watered and cuddled and being given love, but really we all need to spend more time with teenagers. As a mother of a young adult, they often need us far more, especially during the last year or so when things have been so difficult and confusing and socially isolating for them. Christine, I'm just going to bounce over to you. So a very different business, obviously, but what happened to it when COVID hit can we even believe it, last March 2020?
So Synergy design and manufactures solar thermal panels that will replace our gas and oil systems. And for us this year, we were going into early demonstration. We were supposed to launch and open an office in New York and want to manufacture in New York State. And we were looking at demonstrations in Brazil and India. So all of that stopped. The universities closed in terms of our research and development labs. And that was a bit of a standstill. So I suppose, yes, we did a lot of desktop simulation, and we focused in on basically making do with what we could. We learned to Zoom and Teammates an awful lot. And it's amazing how not getting on a plane and just opening your computer, you can actually have the same meetings, the same interaction, and get the same stuff done. So yeah, and not having to travel so much. So I would have been on planes a lot, and not doing that meant that I was on the ground more, and kind of a bit more strategic thinking, having time to take that space and think, well, where are you going to go? How are you going to accelerate quicker when things do open up? And I think probably the disadvantage of it is the lack of serendipity. So I think in business, serendipity plays a big part in terms of when you meet someone and something happens and those connections. And I suppose I saw a lot of that happening with the travel and networking I was doing previously. And yeah, I mean, I think we've survived the short term, but I'm not so sure business will survive without that serendipity and those fortunate connections happening.
Lovely word. And I agree with you. I think almost everybody has talked about those two things. One is a lot of women spend a lot of time traveling when they're at a certain level. And one of the big things was it was the first time for most of them to pause. I think when you meet a woman of a certain age who's successful, you know, they've been working straight out of college and never stopped really until the pandemic hit. But secondly, that, you know, that lovely idea of just meeting somebody and this happen chance that creates some new connection. And what about yourself, Christine? I'm guessing, having looked at your incredible career, that you're one of those that never stopped. What about you personally?
I still never stopped. You just being in that, your brain is always thinking. It's always looking for opportunities and thinking how to solve and get over challenges and do things. So that never stopped. So your brain didn't stop. You know, maybe you kind of slowed down in terms of life. I find it difficult stopping in the evenings working from home. So it was very difficult to kind of, you know, it was so easy to go downstairs, get something to eat, and then come back up and get back into to just because there was nothing else to do. So I think after the first while stopping that, because it wasn't healthy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm totally the same as you. But in those early days, was there not, like, people forget, I think, in the early months how frightening it was. You know, in my other life, I'm interviewing nurses, and when they start talking about the first wave, I'm reminded of how it was really scary in those first few months. It was a feeling of the world kind of shifting underneath us. Did you find any strategies, Christine, to cope with that? Like, were you one of those who went for walks or climbed mountains?
I discovered HelloFresh. This is a plug for HelloFresh. It's like a box of food that arrives at your door, and all of the recipes are in there. And I wouldn't have been a cooker before. I was a kind of a Marks and Spencer's, you know, particularly during the week. I like on a Friday, or sorry, on a Saturday and a Sunday spending some time at the oven. But during the week, it was kind of more quick, easy food. And then when you're traveling as well, you're used to that as well. So yeah, HelloFresh kind of really slowed down the evening. So you opened the box and out came this little recipe, and then, you know, you put it together and there was like a sense of accomplishment, and it was lovely and fresh, and you could sit down and enjoy it with the family. The unfortunate thing is, because you kind of got excited that you'd made this, you had to open the wine to go with it.
Not too sure that's too unfortunate sometimes. I'm going to move to a woman who would put us all to shame in terms of her cooking skills. Moya, before you tell us all about that bit, what about your business? You know, hit really badly during the pandemic?
Oh, well, the entertainment industry and the creative industries were decimated, and everybody was traumatized, because I think probably that and tourism were the two. Hospitality and tourism were just, I mean, it was extraordinary. We had invested heavily in the 25th anniversary show. We were steaming ahead. We launched in the 3 Arena. We were in Radio City Music Hall in New York on my birthday, the 12th of March, and my birthday present for 2020 was a shutdown of all our shows. We were also in the UK. We had 87% ticket sales. So we had to close down work for several hundred people and bring them all home safely. Many of them, thankfully, they're young and fit, encountered COVID on the way back. One, a doctor who had taken time out from working as a doctor to just dance in Riverdance because she wanted to be in the 25th show in Radio City. And she and a few of them contracted COVID. But thankfully, all our people were well. So it was heartbreaking for us because we are a people first organisation. Our dancers and our performers deliver so much, as do our audiences. So really, and the uncertainty of it, we weren't sure because we were travelling through so many different states in North America and so many different cities in the UK and planning ahead. And every government took a different approach, as we now know, to how they handled the pandemic. So it was very tricky and really sad, actually. And I admire our performers hugely because I see them on social media keeping their fitness level up, because we are back at the end of August, picking up on our UK tour. Thankfully, our audiences have been really loyal. Many of them left their ticket sales with Ticketmaster. So we pick up and then we go back to the States in 2022. But for the lives of performers, it's like athletes, they're short lives. And to lose that amount of time is a heartbreak. But I suppose on the positive side, we were also producing Riverdance the animated feature, which incidentally premieres on Sky tonight for those of the 6-year-old in all of us will just love it. So we were halfway through that. And when COVID came, we finished it remotely. And it was extraordinary because we had producers and directors in Montreal, Vancouver, the UK. Bill Whelan was in Roundstone. I was in Dublin with my fellow producer, Patricia, and David Brophy was in Vienna with a full orchestra. And we recorded the track in March of this year. So we completed the movie. So that was an upside.
It's amazing. When you're talking, you know, I get the sense it was a roller coaster of emotions for you for the year, you know, going from, like, a lot of women go through so many different things during the pandemic. And for some of them, it is like what you've described, Moya. And there is a busyness about that too. Not just, you know, the fact that something stops means that you sometimes are intensively busy. I can hear it in trying to solve all the issues. What about you personally? What did you lean into yourself?
Oh, well, I mean, I think I was totally ambivalent about the pandemic, and I really didn't like lockdown at all, actually. I don't think it was a very positive experience for me. I mean, I've always worked from home. In fact, Riverdance was originated at a kitchen table that I still have, that kitchen table, not in the same house, but the table. But, you know, I enjoy, we talked about cooking earlier on. I qualified at some point in cooking. I love to cook. So what I did was I cooked for everybody. I was like a one-woman, crazy woman delivering food to doors for people. I walked, I did yoga, I did meditation. I suppose I had time to analyze, but I missed live entertainment. I missed the sense of standing at the back of a theatre or going to an art gallery or a museum or seeing a new piece of painting. I mean, it's wonderful. This has been, technology is amazing, but I miss the human contact.
Yeah, I think we all do. I don't think any of us liked the lockdown, but I was intrigued, and we might come back to it later, that sometimes creative people, and you've got such a sparky creative brain full of ideas all the time, when they get that pause, sometimes their brain starts to think in different ways. Maybe, you know, the connection is gone and some of the sparks are gone, but also the synapses are moving slightly differently. But we might come back to that. Roseanne, the woman who supports women at a time when they're going through, you know, some of the scariest and most frightening time of their lives. What was it like for you? What was it like for the organization first?
Well, Women in Business, we have 5,500 members, and I mean, a key part of what we do is deliver live events and networking for our members. And programs. So, you know, that's kind of what we're doing in a nutshell. When the pandemic hit, I was actually in Washington for the St. Patrick's Day celebrations with a whole pile of events lined up. And then they started to get cancelled. And then it was I spent half a day in a hotel trying to get Aer Lingus to get home. Everybody was trying to get on planes to get out. So that was how the pandemic had hit me, and back into the office to close it. Obviously staff with children and get them home. And then after that, it really was cancelling events, cancelling venues, doing refunds. You know, so they were the kind of basic things that we had to get in and get sorted. And really, in terms of the staff, there was I kept myself going, and Nikki, who's our programs manager, and ND Events, who run our events and are brilliant. And I know Catherine was furloughed at the time. So there was three of us there thinking, right, our whole business is around networking and about people meeting each other. What are we going to do? So very quickly, I suppose, realized that actually our members needed us now more than ever. So that first panic, which was about, are our members going to leave, or because we were not delivering, very quickly we realized that no, they do need us now more than ever. So it was straight pivoting onto online.
Yeah, I think most people say that their development in digital and online has been 10 years worth in 1 year, which is great actually for a lot of businesses. Razan, what about you personally? How did you cope in the early days in particular?
Well, I was fine. My parents are both well and healthy and live in Armagh in the country, and we're isolated. I have a 14-year-old son, so he was in Xbox heaven, and quickly realized that he was a genius because he got all of his homework done in a half an hour. That's what he told me. And when we got to the Christmas exams, he seemed to have done okay. So no, I was fine, and I suppose I've always said, and Christine will know that I'm an introvert doing an extrovert's job, networking. So coming back and working from home, I actually enjoyed it. And actually this office where I am now is where Women in Business started. So no, I was okay with it, to tell you the truth.
That's good. I think, to be honest, anybody who's got sons will know that they coped far better. My boy is socially isolating as a matter of course. He's doing his finals at the moment, but I think girls are the ones that struggled a great deal during the pandemic. And also there's great articles written about introverts and how well they survived those early few months, definitely. And bouncing straight into you. So the point of this really is to discuss moments in your business journey, not necessarily since the pandemic, although you have had a big change in recent months, about transformation, about, think about the time when you realized the business needed to change. Was it a eureka, wake up in the morning, oh my goodness, it needs to change, or was it more gradual?
Well, I think over the course of the last 30 years, we've had several times when the business has really needed to change, and we've had to come through a couple of fairly significant crises, but I think none quite like this one. And I suppose what was interesting for me is that several years ago in CPL, we founded the Future of Work Institute, and that was to advise our clients on new workforce models, better ways they could get access to talent, how people's preferences were changing in terms of the workplace. And I suppose what I really realized, and of course there were changes happening well before the pandemic, but what has really hit me strongly in terms of the pandemic is just the pace at which that change has taken place. And in some ways, this pandemic has proven that there are many different ways now that work can get done. And I think certainly for me, in terms of changing my attitude and mindset, we're now working on our Back to the Office program. We're looking very carefully at both, people, process, and what's the infrastructure now that we need to deliver in this new world. I think that all organizations are likely to be going through that type of change.
When you describe the change, obviously the changes, you have a mindset, obviously, that's constantly looking at where you can change, like innovation seems to be a state of mind for you. But when you are considering those changes, what is going on in your head? Do you lean into a mentor? I know your husband also works in the business. Do you and he talk in the evening, or do you bring the team around, or are you kind of a lonely leader chatting to yourself in your head?
Oh, no. Well, I think mindset is one of the most important determinants of your success in your career. And that's the time at which we work with people, is when they're building their careers. I think it's a huge predictor of success. And I think it's very much about having that belief that you'll come through successfully in terms of what you're doing. You won't always get it right all the time. And I suppose for me, yes, I was fortunate to have my husband working in business, so we could share some of the experiences. But also, while I didn't have a specific mentor, I have a great extended network. I have a great leadership team. I lean heavily on them. So I believe in hiring really good people and then empowering them to do their job, and I take a lot of support from them. But also too, I have a great network through the EY Entrepreneur of the Year network, and entrepreneurs who've grown their business, and like there's very few problems out there that somebody hasn't hit at some stage, and certainly I get lots of support and advice there too.
And I think all of us, like I would say that my women network or my business colleague network, they're not all women, by the way, are totally invaluable to me. When anybody asks me, describe the best mentor in your business life, I just make something up, because there was no such thing as a mentor in my day.
Oh my.
What I'm describing is usually a chat with a male boss about, he'll say, where do you think you're going? And I'll say, well, I don't know, maybe I'll go into journalism. I think you should do that. And that's what I describe as a mentorship session. And I've often felt if the power of a short chat with your male boss could encourage you to do something different in your career, imagine, the power of having a proper mentor, who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Christine, I know from your life journey that you went from, a family roofing, heavy construction business to Eureka, solar panels on roofs. But tell me a little bit about the transformation in the business.
Yeah, I mean, the transformation was very much built around sustainability in the construction sector. So anybody that's going to survive in construction got carbon targets are being driven by governments globally. And so being sustainable right through the supply chain, from the materials you choose through to incorporating energy within the building, through to delivering that at a cost that people can afford. And so that was very much part of the vision of Synergy, that we would be part of the future built environment. And that was one transformation when the construction industry was going through a really difficult time, and we decided to survive in it, we needed to become sustainable. The pandemic has absolutely expressed the need to accelerate where we're going. I mean, the pandemic is a drop in the ocean in comparison to what will happen to us when climate change hits. And I think more and more people are realizing in the business world that we need to take our each individual business and discover how we can become sustainable for our customer. And so for us, it's the last year has really, really underlined the importance of accelerating where we're at.
Yes.
And I suppose then if you think about then the support and where I go to keep that vision and the company aligned to that vision. Synergy are supported by BES, who are the Business Energy Industrial Strategy in the UK. And with that, we have a company called Carbon Limited Technologies, who are what we would classify as an incubate support company. So they support the business as an incubation, and any challenges that we see going on, it's like, well, what are the obstacles, right? What do we need to move out of the way? And they provide a whole support system around that, which is unbelievable, particularly in an innovation journey. And then through that,
Christian, can I just ask you one thing? So obviously going back to the moment when you saw that sustainability as a future, and I completely agree with you. The pandemic has crystallized all those things around, green energy and sustainability. But what was going on in your mind at the time while you were transitioning? Did you have a mentor? Is the family quite close knit? Did you lean in on that?
No, because no, it was very much as a leader. You just go right. You kind of take some time out. You meditate. You come back. You free space, and you think, right, what are the chess moves here? And you try to envisage and vision what does the future look like? What does it likely look? And do you want to be a part of that? So if you want to be a part of that, what do you need to do in the chess moves to get there? So it's for me, it was a very one person kind of trying to work it all out, and then you go out and look for the army that's going to help you do it.
Yeah, there's always different approaches. I think definitely doing your homework and risk analysis and everything helps with that lonely journey. But I know that's one of the things that that founders talk about all the time, how lonely it is sometimes to be talking to yourself. But I think you're obviously very well used to it, Christine. Moya, I guess it would be tempting to just, Riverdance, such a phenomenal success and been going on and successfully going on for so long. But yet there were transformations, huge transformations on your business journey. Can you tell us about those and how they happened?
Yes, I mean, the creative industries is such a unique and unusual industry to be part of that it tends to be project by project. It's not one long-term journey. It's something that occurs, it grows, you succeed or you fail. I think that what our vision now is that, and again, I'm like Anne, and my partner John is in the business with me. And even though we have very different responsibilities, he's a director and I'm a producer, and those are two incredibly different roles. It's, I mean, for me now, the piece is cementing the legacy, because we're at a certain age. Nora, you and I mentioned there were no such thing as mentors when we were starting out on our journey. And so I suppose, the one thing I am certain is that we need to build, whatever new structures we do build, are kinder and fairer. I think they're two old-fashioned notions, but I think they're kind of timeless. So what we're doing is we're creating Riverdance academies around the world. There is going to be the sustainability issue because our product is based on global travel. So therefore, what role will VR or AR play in the future of entertainment? So all of those things we need to get together with our team and in a collaborative form discuss and plan. So no eureka moment, but a slow realization, and a hope that this brand will be there long after I've left this universe to another place, and to leave it in a good condition, and in a condition that represents all that is good about the entertainment industry.
And I think what is true is that for many businesses, they had the ability to change from within. So the whole world's changed over the last year, but the world is changing all the time. Consumers are changing, work life, everything is changing. For some, they just stood static and said, let's hope that the world goes back to the way it was before, which never happens. And for others like yourself, you recognize immediately, because you are at the coalface of consumerism in the creative industries, I need to change. I need to be thinking to the future. But I also had a husband in the business, Richard, before he departed, but we were totally different. He didn't like finance or strategy or being a CEO. He was a creative person. He worked in editorial, so it worked really, really well. But when you're considering all these things that are obviously going on in your head the whole time, do you test them out with John? Do you test them out with the team? Do you test them out with other peers that you've, grown close to?
Oh, yes. I mean, we have a really experienced team, and we listen. I mean, listening is so important, isn't it? I suppose my leadership role is both in the private and the public sector. And I think with a public body, it might be worth just mentioning RTE. I mean, my role, I've been chair of that organization for 6 years. It has never been a more difficult time for the public service media and for that media. It's in such a state of global disruption. And again, in terms of my mission and my hope there is now that we have Brie and McCraw on board, and they are going to deliver, hopefully, a certainty for the future of public service media, because I think all of us women depend hugely on having a source that is reliable and truthful, and that we can't have our messages merely driven by social media. So there's a huge amount of work to do there. And for me, that's a big piece of a personal journey for me. That is something I really, really want to deliver with government certainty for the future of public service media, as other media are in Europe, because it's so tricky.
And Brian is exactly the right man to do it. He's the biggest brain on the planet. I think if I ever wanted to test out an idea, he's my go-to person. He's a fantastic knowledge, intellect, ability to think strategically. Roseanne, what about you? Tell us a little bit about transformation in the organization. I mean, as you know, yourself and Christine are part of that journey, but you're constantly transforming and changing. How does it work in your head?
I suppose I'm one of these people who I just keep pushing on and just keep doing something different and keep trying things, and and probably don't look back as often as I should to see how far we've come along the journey. Particularly, I suppose, with COVID, it was one of those scenarios where what are we going to do, and we pivoted online, but even with that, it was like, what do our members need? So we were putting on 4 events a week. We had a well-being one, we had a networking one, we had quizzes, and then we had an conversation with Pamela Ballantyne, which was a fun kind of chatty evening thing. What time do people want to be connecting? It was all of that. So we were throwing the kitchen sink at it to ensure that we can keep engaged and try and support our members. The networking was the first one that we let go, because it doesn't work online. It doesn't work on a Zoom. The well-being was something that was really, really important. So we did more of that. The quizzes, people enjoyed those, because what were they going to do in the evening if they weren't cooking? So we tried all of these things, and I suppose that was at the very early stages. We've had 2 schedules since then of events that have all been online, and working with ND events, very flexible, and we've been working with them for years. We try things. Some of the other things we've tried to set up a Facebook group to walk and talk and say, like, okay, we're going to walk to the North Pole. Didn't get much engagement. It depended on the timing, and I suppose it was the realization that people and women in particular were at home, and they were at home with the children, and they didn't really have as much time, and how did you get them engaged? So we just keep trying things and keep pushing along. And I suppose one of the things that came out of this was this series. It was an opportunity to do something on an all-Ireland basis. You can do this on Zoom, and so it's just keeping trying, and that's something I suppose I've always done, is just keep driving on forward. If it doesn't work, get rid of it and just keep on going.
And it's really interesting. So the largest increase in startups happened just after the last recession. Now, I'm always of the mantra that we should keep the founders alive that are there already, because there's a lot of businesses around Ireland where a lifetime sometimes multiple lifetimes has been invested in a business, and there'll always be a coffee shop in Westport, but it may be Starbucks. So I always recognize that because I'm my Dragon's Den persona, perhaps, I'm drowning in pitches. I don't even have to be in the den to get pitches daily through LinkedIn and through everything. So I know that people's minds are active and thinking about where's the gap, where can I plug it? And for you yourself, Roseanne, I was really interested around the mental health supports, because that's my sense, is that even busy women, when I'm booked to do corporate gigs, they're describing these horrendous days of throwing the wash in, running onto the Zoom, and maybe in the early days, bosses needed people to be on Zooms a long time just to make sure you were working, which is just utterly exhausting. One thing I'll ditch after we open Zoom. Sorry, now we're on it at the moment. So Roseanne, your mindset yourself while doing all that well-being and help and supports was obviously in the moment, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm the kind of person who, under pressure and I'm in situations like that, I'm good. I kind of, that when you're at university and you had to hand in your essays, I read history, and I had extensions on the extensions. I tortured myself. That's the type of person I am, and so therefore, when the pressure comes on, I'm quite cool, but I can deliver. So for me, I was fine. But the team I got very close to during this period, and And the boards, I had 2 boards. I had my board of the diversity mark and also the board of women in business. And again, they were hugely supportive. And because of the boards and the industries they were in, I was getting all advice and from experts who were dealing with all of this as well. So I do think the boards were very helpful, and obviously the team, and particularly ND Events and my own team, listening to them. And I think I did learn to listen better over this period. And I think one of the things from Zoom, although it can be meeting after meeting, I think people were nicer to each other on Zoom.
Yeah.
And well, they seemed to be there was more informal. They were letting you into their homes, and people did seem to be more familiar, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we all got better at getting our backgrounds right, she says,
I haven't.
with my entire life portrayed behind me. But I mean, the one thing about Zoom I just have to say is that the intensity of seeing up close and personal faces means, you know, if I go into a meeting before, I could doodle a little bit, give a bit of eye contact, roll my eyes sometimes. There was kind of a slightly hidden, you know, ability in a meeting, whereas you're just all on. I have a friend who calls her resting bitch face. Like she says she's on a Zoom and she completely forgets where she is, and then afterwards her colleagues are messaging her saying, "Were you really cross during that?" And she said, "No, I always look like this," you know. And just let's do a little dive into what did you do before that you don't do now, and also you took a difficult decision recently to sell the business, and that must have been very difficult. So I'm guessing there are things you did before that you don't do now, right now.
Right, indeed. Well, look, the most obvious one for me, and in some ways the one I miss most, and it's adding to what Roseanne was saying there, it's just those casual meetings, those casual encounters. You know, you're in the office and you say to somebody, "Oh, what did we do there?" or "What was that about?" Whereas now I feel everything has to be organized. We have to organize a meeting to even answer the most simple question, just because other people that I'm in contact with are all on their calls and all that. So I definitely miss that human contact, and I would have had a lot more of it before. In terms of the decision to sell the business, it was a difficult decision. It was interesting timing, and certainly we didn't expect it to happen at that time. The company outsourcing who acquired our business had initially had some informal conversations with us prior to COVID, and then as soon as COVID hit, then of course that inevitably those early kind of conversations stopped. And I think one of the things they said was that while COVID was clearly difficult for our business and difficult to come through, the fact that we handled the crisis well, and the leadership team in particular of the business handled the crisis well, I think it gave them some comfort that we have a strong leadership team across the business. And regardless of what you throw at us, we will certainly do our best to come out the other side.
And Dan, I'm guessing, having sold a chunk of my business, the largest chunk in 2017, I know these can be the busiest times, and they also involve a level of mindset which is nothing like your normal day-to-day, because you're constantly pulling together documents and material and deep diving and strategically thinking. Is there something there that you had to let go of in terms of, you know, in order to find the capacity to do all of that? Were you up on the mountain all the time, leaving the day-to-day to?
No, I have a really good team. So, you know, operationally, the leadership team really run the day-to-day business. And I suppose my role is more the outward facing side of the business. And also now I'm very focused on integrating us with our new parent, and of course helping them get up to speed with the nuances of the businesses in the different geographies in which we are operating in. It's busier than ever. No, my Japanese isn't great, but I've made great friends with Interpretify.
Okay, good. Christine, can I just ask you the same question? What did you do before that you don't do now? Just have a think about your behaviors, I guess.
Oh, pack suitcases. And I think as a female as well, what you have to put in a suitcase, you know, and I would get to the other end and there would be men and they had like the same suit, or the same pair of trousers, sometimes the same shirt on 2 days, you know. And we have to think, oh, well, if I wear that dress, then those shoes don't go, and I have to get on the tube in London, so those flats are going to be needed. And then your makeup, you have to get it into all these wee tiny things and sort that all out.
And hair.
And it's just, it's a lot of work.
I love it. I remember when I was commuting, Christine, and I would nearly have a bag perpetually packed. I would have a whole set of small things that would go in the, the liquids and everything. And I don't miss that one iota. Yeah. In work, is there anything, I don't know what kind of a leader you are, Christine, whether you're a detailed person, are you sweating the small stuff, are you always up on the mountain? What do you think has changed for you that you're doing differently now? I
think I'm learning to trust my other leaders. So I kind of always thought it was me that had to do everything. And it's back to, when I think I kind of am an introvert, and I do a lot of deep thinking and working out and all. So I think for me, it was actually learning the eureka moment in terms of personally was learning to trust other leaders and to realize that your job was actually just to build other leaders and then kind of, enjoy that journey with them because you've put the trust in them, you've delegated to them, and you know they're going to deliver. So just then it becomes, you get that momentum. That's kind of I used to be an Irish dancer. I actually was an Irish dancing teacher as well, Moya, way back in my early days. I probably 10 years younger, I definitely would have made river dance, definitely. But it's that momentum when you're dancing, and it's kind of like business. When you're in that momentum and you've got a team and the crescendo's coming, there's no other feeling like it.
That's just a beautiful way of putting it, Christine. I think we're sisters in many ways. I still haven't, sometimes I go through moments when I can delegate, but mostly I think I can do it better than anyone else. I do it myself. Moya, two introverts on the call, interestingly enough. Would you describe yourself as an introvert?
Yes, I'm an introvert who extroverts. And for those of you who want to read a book about it, Susan McCann, Quiet. Yeah. It's the most fantastic book. And if you're a parent, it's a fantastic book. Because if your little Johnny is in the playground and he's not playing with anybody, and then you go to the teacher and say, what's wrong with Johnny? There's nothing wrong with Johnny. Johnny just wants to be on his own. Yeah. So, it's a fantastic read. I think going on what Christine talked about there, I think to me that what the pandemic has brought in terms of the work thing is a freedom not to be as concerned about the grooming. No. I have a different relationship with that now, and I'm never going to go back to the kind of that journey of perfection that we put ourselves into as women. I'm going to go more casually around it. So I think that's a tremendous relief. I also no longer see work as the primary force of my existence. I no longer have meetings in order to be able to say that we had them. And I no longer allow myself to carry all the responsibility and be involved in every single initiative. And I have become a little bit more skillful at delegation.
I love that. I've ditched underwire bras, just to put it out there. I am never going back to an underwire bra. Not for anything in the world. Roseanne, how about you? What's changed in the way you behave?
I suppose the big thing for me is to be not networking. I would have been out and about at events and dinners and lunches and all of that kind of thing. And so that's a big piece that has gone. And in fairness and in agreement with my, it's not something that I hugely miss. I miss some of them, but not the level and intensity of it. And I definitely will not go back to that. And I do think Zoom is good for that. I mean, I remember whenever the lockdown was just over in July, going down to meet Minister Dodds' special advisor. And it was a 30-minute meeting in the hotel. And the whole thing took the guts by the time I got the makeup on and all sorted and into the car and down and got the car parked and everything else. It was about 2 hours and it cost me about £16 between paying for the coffees and the parking. And 2 hours for a 30-minute conversation, it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. So I think that's something that I will definitely take a good look at in terms of my time and that network. Yeah.
And more time with the grandchildren.
Well, yes, I mean, that was one of the things. And I suppose I do sit back and I'm very, very thankful, because I mean, I read a lot of reports about women, how women have been impacted by COVID, and hugely, and that the equality divide is, I think Bernardo's have said since reports began, the divide is the widest ever. So I am very, very thankful that I'm happy here. But I also, and Christy will know, during the lockdown, my daughter had my first grandchild, and I was able, because of the situation we were in, she lived in Chester, I was able to actually go over and get into her bubble and work over there, because I could work from Chester, and I was there for her, and then she came back home at Christmas. So one of the things is I am very appreciative and thankful for what I have, because it is very clear that there's a huge amount of people who have suffered really, really badly. And this is why, you know, in terms of our members, our membership has grown because people do need support from other people. We have had a lot more corporates who have joined, because they want to provide something for their female staff. They know that they're suffering. So yeah, so I don't think I'll ever complain about anything again.
Thanks. I don't know. I think some of my Vital Voices colleagues might be on, but my other life is working with Vital Voices, and we track the she session, as they call it. You know, the millions and millions of women. I have to say, many in developing countries who have lost their jobs since the start of it. Because firstly, usually the first to go. Sometimes in the Western world and in the corporate sector, women are the last in, and they're the last one to get into the C-suite, the last one to get in. They're lost. Also, women often take on what businesses often think of as softer roles, sometimes in marketing and public relations, and they also got the job. So there's a whole varied reason as to why women didn't survive. But I also think, Rosanna, if they were on when we do our calls, mentorship calls with women in Africa and India and across Asia, they think we are living in platinum standard society here because of I know I'm always giving out, but the pandemic supports have been incredible for people who, you know, who are furloughed and businesses who needed help with their wages. Now, I want your brain to be on fire, because it's the last quick fire round of your, you know, out of your brain, the nuggets of wisdom you're going to impart to our panelists. Thank you, Ciara. Shout out, I see, to Vital Voices. Track them if you want to know more. So Anne, how's your brain feeling? And can you give some advice to the participants about what you've learned in your journey and what they could learn from you?
Well, I think one of the first things that I've learned is, having been through several crises over the last 30 years, that they don't last forever. You do come out the other side of them. And so it's important to try and keep that front and center, but they do give time to pause and look at opportunity and look at what's not working and what is working within your business. And the other piece of advice I would say is just mind and nurture your key talent. And the best way to do that is by giving them lots of opportunity for learning, stretch them with challenging assignments, and you know, just be mindful of the fact that, and I think actually this COVID crisis has brought this front and center, that we now very much see the whole person. You know, we talked earlier about how with Zoom and stuff, you're coming into people's homes. I think we're much more conscious today of, it's not just the work element of the person in the workforce, it's the whole person that you're dealing with and all that's going on.
Anne, would you describe yourself as an introvert?
I am very definitely an introvert.
Can't believe it. 4 women on the call who are introverts. That's unbelievable. Like, that says something. And how do you get, sorry, just to ask you one question. One of the things that, you know, I dedicate a lot of time to is confidence, right? So for women, not competence, confidence. Often they're coming out of college with better qualifications than the guys, yet they're lost to the corporate world. And it boils down to, you can look at all behavioral studies, but confidence. Where did you get your confidence from as an introvert?
Well, I'd say I don't have a lot of it actually, in reality. But, you know, I think there is a piece about your resilience and digging deep. So, for example, for me, one of the things that I had most fear about was speaking in public or doing something like this panel. And I started many years ago, and I just pushed and pushed myself to do it. And of course you do, when you reach out to others too, you get the support of others around you and say, well, that wasn't so bad, and you know, you could improve here, or that's good. So I do think just working hard on your mindset. I mean, it is the biggest determinant of your success in your career, and making sure, and it's not just all about a positive mindset and happy clappy. I mean, we all face adversity on our journey along the way. But I think it's about drawing on support where you need it, particularly when you hit tough times as well.
And that's the beauty of plasticity, to use that word, and that when you do something once, you know, it starts a little muscle in your brain, and then if you do it again and again, you get better and better at it. It might surprise you. I would describe myself as an extrovert, my son as an introvert, but I also struggled when I started doing public speaking. I had that rash all down my neck and the lump in the throat and dry mouth. So even for extroverts, it's very difficult. But over time, you learn how to do it. Thanks, Anne. Christine, what about you? What's going on in your head that you can give to us?
I think practice makes perfect. It's kind of, if you know, that you just said it there, when you keep doing something, you get better at it. I don't, whether I'll bring it back to my confidence coming from my Irish dancing days, when somebody threw you at the age of 7 onto the stage, pointed your toe, and there was a huge hall looking at you, you get confidence. So it's just keep practicing. You know, when you, and today is about change and transformation, and when you see something that you spot an opportunity that you can change or do something differently, speak up, ask, push the door open for yourself, and then practice that continuous kind of building, you know, that momentum, and all those small steps that snowball that eventually will give you momentum. But it's, if you don't keep practicing and you don't keep striving for it, you won't get there. But it's kind of seeing the vision, seeing the future, and then practice your way into it.
Very good advice, Christine. And also do something that scares you. I think those two things work very well together. Abject fear is very good. Moya, how about you?
A couple of things. And I think a quote from a feminist writer who was in the 1930s, Audre Lorde, said, "Caring for yourself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that it is an act of political warfare. It is also an act of business acumen." I think that's a really important quote. A couple of things that strike me hugely is that building a business does not have to be a race. Success is a long patience, a long, slow patience. I'm really interested in the concept of a 4-day week. I would be pioneering it. There's a company in Belfast called Italic Pig who do it. The 5th day they give back to the community. And speaking of community, we have to have we all need as women to pioneer for a universal basic income. That will allow us all to create, that will create a fairer society, better communities, a better rural-urban divide, so that hopefully maybe we can get together and make that a mission for us as women.
And I think I 100% agree with you on a universal basic income. Your own confidence, Moya, you know, where did that come from? Were you confident as a young girl?
No, absolutely miserable. I couldn't speak. What helped me, and a bit like Christine, I took theatre studies. I wanted to be an actor. So I spent most of my youth performing as an actor. That gives enormous confidence for public speaking. That you hide behind your words. So it gives you breathing technique. It allows you to cope with dry mouth. It's just a technical approach. I would say every single person should take theatre and acting lessons. It helps enormously. And it allows you to just open up and be liberated.
Yeah, it's very good advice, actually, Moya. Roseanne, final word to you before we finish.
I suppose I've always said never give up. Always ask, be ambitious. But I suppose one of the kind of key things, I mean, people would say, oh, here's Roseanne, she's coming, you know, just give her what she wants. You know, she's always asking for things. And I suppose over the years, and listening to other female leaders, you know, when they talk about their journey, they talk about, you know, when they're in that middle place, you know, how they were maybe not as nice as they could have been, or whatever. And I think my advice would be, you know, you feel nicer when you are being nice, and start being nice earlier in your career, rather than doing it all later on and thinking that you have to be this harsh person to get what you need. So I would say be nicer earlier, and you'll enjoy your career better. And I suppose the other thing that Moya was saying about this caring and universal, like childcare, we have a childcare subcommittee, and part of that has come from the change in women in business through COVID, that we are now more of a lobbying voice than we would have been in the past, and taking that up. And I absolutely agree that we need to start valuing the care, and in particular the care that women give. There needs to be, I think women should be paid for minding their children at home. You give a creche £1,000, why they call the women at home who are rearing the future economically inactive? That's wrong.
I agree with you so much. Thanks, Roseanne. I think two good things. One is our own Citizens Assembly under Catherine Day is going to announce on the 6th of June, I believe, on women's issues here, which will be great. They've been gathering information for all kinds of brilliant organisations. And I'm on a Dole forum started by the Ceann Comhairle, looking at family-friendly practices in our Parliament, for want of a better word, which, of course, you know, anybody who's been around knows that we had a big debate whether our Justice Minister would have to resign because we didn't have maternity leave for ministers, for TDs. So leaving with me 2 words of wisdom. One is, fantastic to have a great panel today. I hope you get the message that business women, successful business women, are not beamed down from outer space. If you look at the backstories of these 4 women, you will realize what they went through in order to be what they are today. My own story, I was at a Desh school, 8 of us in a 3-bed house in the Phoenix Park. I started life as a nurse, so the chances of somebody like me doing what I did in life is minuscule, very minuscule. And also I would say that I did a series for RTE many moons ago, well, a few years ago, with young travellers. And, you know, one of those young travellers had never learned to read or write. She'd only had 10 weeks schooling. So when you're sitting there with your lovely degrees and you think that life is hard in terms of your business journey, it's not hard. For those women, it's very hard. I did it because I met a great woman in the traveling community who said to me, if you think it's tough being a woman in business, try being a traveler woman in business. And it really struck a chord with me. So I'd love all of you to go out there today and think about these great conversations you've had, what you want to do. Get up on that mountain and set a sat nav. Your brain will love it. Just a sat nav in terms of you and where you're going over the next 6 months. And keep asking women who've got there already, or men, and tell them about your journey. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day. Hopefully the rain's going to stop down here, and I think it's sunny in Belfast. Cheers, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.